Carrying ranked matches as Viper takes calculated utility usage combined with precise aggression. The best way to win your team rounds and set yourself up for success as Viper is by playing around your wall and smoke while isolating fights. In this guide, we'll go through some crucial moments for Bugsy's Smurf commentary on Viper and dissect his impact on the round. Bugsy is a Radiant level controller main who we put in gold elo to see how he would carry his team on Icebox. And today we're going to focus on how to set up your abilities on defense, paying attention to small details that can give away enemy positions, along with how to attack each site as Viper. And through analysing Bugsy's play, we'll also gain insight into how to have impact flanking and holding for flanks. The first and most important thing we're going to highlight in this game is how to play sites as Viper. She has an extremely unique defensive mindset that you need to get into to play her optimally. The key to holding sites as Viper is by selecting fights around your smoke and wall. For the enemy, fighting through a Viper wall or planting in a Viper smoke is a risky play. Therefore, as Viper on Icebox, you want to force enemies into a fight while they're in your utility. Let's take a look at how to do this by examining some setups Bugsy uses, but that he has taken from pro matches. Let's start by looking at the B bomb site, the more conventional spot for Viper to play. In fact, pro teams almost always play their Viper solo at B. The setup is based around this wall and this smoke. Now, using this Viper wall serves two purposes. You're cutting through the B orb area and stopping peeks from yellow to site. The enemy has to push through this wall twice to get to site, then again on a potential retake. And that's what makes it so strong. Combined with a Viper orb that covers the entire default plant area, you should be able to single-handedly get kills and stop plants until your team rotates. Notice how I'm using my Viper mollies in combination with smoke to prevent Omen from planting. Rather than committing to fights, I'm stalling. By the time I take my first fight with the Omen, my two teammates are fully rotated and are fighting with me. Now that we know how to delay a B plant for rotates, let's look at a pro setup for those rounds you need to play A. On round 4, Bugsy decided to play A and used a wall smoke combo that Fnatic's Boaster uses. He starts the round by using his smoke to let him take a cheese fight A main. Actually, I'll let him explain it.
I'll show you a cool A setup. This one I learned from Fnatic. So I'm going to take the rope right there and then throw a smoke right there. And it'll create sort of like a one-way for me. There, you see what I mean with that angle?
Next, after getting the first pick, Bugsy understands that they're going to be watching that angle and plays out the round by repositioning after each encounter. Playing the A site, repositioning like this is beneficial because there are just so many angles for attackers to clear. You're able to take a pick and then fall back to another angle they may not expect and repeat. Now, before we move on to the next round, remember if you wanted to catch this entire game from Bugsy, along with his commentary throughout the round, that's all available on our website. This is all part of a larger course that we have where we teach you exactly the best practices to play Viper, so be sure to check that out at SkillCapped.com. Link in the description below. Once you get accustomed to holding with your agent, another thing to improve on, and that applies to all agents, is your constant awareness of the minimap and scoreboard. And no, I don't mean paying attention to how many kills your duelist has or doesn't have. The UI gives you the valuable information that helps you interpret the game state and clues you in on the position of your opponents. In this game, Bugsy managed to get the reads on the enemy and win multiple rounds because of his attention to detail. Our first example of the importance of paying attention at all times comes in the opening pistol round. As it becomes clear that this is going to be an A take and Bugsy begins to rotate off B, he mentions that.
Just trying to watch the minimap as I'm rotating, keeping track of who's there. I'm pretty sure everyone's there.
One thing that he notices is that Omen is seen running to backside and that Skye and Reyna seem to be pushing screens. After dispatching of Skye and Reyna that Bugsy was prepared for because of the minimap, the enemies are left with just Omen. Based on this information, he concludes, Bugsy correctly guesses where the Omen is and carefully shoulder peeks the angle to get the kill. What's important to recognize here is that normally there's no reason to shoulder peek this particular angle. However, because Bugsy paid attention to the map during his rotate, he was able to figure out where Omen would be. Another good example of the UI giving you important information comes in round 6 of this game. While hunting down the Omen to try and hurt the other team's economy, Bugsy notices that Omen suddenly appears as having his ultimate. Now, this information is nearly as good as a cipher reveal as it narrows the Omen's position down to exactly a tiny circle around the B alt orb. While it didn't happen in this specific game, another pro tip to use the alt orbs for information is to press tab as soon as you hear an orb being taken. Remember, the scoreboard shows exactly how many alt points every player has at all times, so you just watch to see whose number increases and it lets you know which enemy is there. Now, this can help you because if you know a certain agent tends to lurk, or it's an agent whose utility you haven't seen yet, you can often guess where multiple enemies are. Now, we've covered defending as Viper in the first section, so now let's take a look at how to attack with her. Much like on defense, Viper has a pretty limited selection of walls that she should choose from each round. In this section, we're going to focus on the B bomb site and flanking. Firstly, let's take a look at the most common wall you're going to want to use for B hits. This wall B obscures defender's view from snow and sight to let you take control and plant default. After placing the wall, Bugsy decides to go for a flank in this round. He noticed that the enemy team doesn't have a Sage and hasn't been playing Tube, so he goes for a fast but stealthy push through the kitchen. This flank then results in 2 quick kills. By this point, the round is basically over. Bugs has placed his utility to help his team get onto site, all while successfully executing a flank and getting 2 opening picks on B. Here he actually makes a mistake and goes over-aggressive, hunting for kills, and this gets him killed. Instead, Bugsy could have just held on to kitchen control, making the retake basically impossible. Another option would have been to even give up the kitchen, or fall back to mid or B main to play lineups. Viper is invaluable in the post plant because of her delay util, and as Bugsy knows lineups for default plant from both mid and B main, he could have just lived and guaranteed the round. And finally, in the last section of this guide, let's take a look at a good A attack and how to hold for enemy flanks. At the beginning of round 16, you can see Bugsy lining up his default A wall and smoke. There's something very special about this smoke. When you throw it like he did, standing still, it lands mid-site and in combination with a sage wall can provide solid cover for a plant. However, if you run and throw the smoke with the same lineup, you'll get it to land on rafters. That's another powerful smoke if you suspect that the enemy will be opping, as it takes away the most common angle. Now let's get into how Bugsy played the round. Now Icebox is one of the most common maps to have defenders fast flanking you because of just how fast they are able to get behind you compared to the long rotates between sites. Having this knowledge in mind, and given that the defenders have tried flanking in many of the recent rounds, Bugsy decides to hold for the A flank. He sets up at a strong angle in spawn. Now this is an extreme off angle that no flanker will ever clear on the first time. Then as soon as he picks off the flanker, Bugsy quickly pinches the remaining site player with his Sova, ensuring the round. While this is not a tactic that you should be defaulting to every round, it is a strong response to aggressive defenses. Another potential lurk option to consider when your team is planning an A take is through mid. When your team makes contact A, the enemy boiler player will likely rotate to support A. When they commit to the A defense, this gives you a window to push through mid and get a backstab on the screens players. And lastly, remember, if you're looking for more Radiant level examples of how to carry with Viper or any other agent, that's all available on our website, and that link is in the description below. Hopefully this guide helps you understand how Bugsy carried this gold game and gives you the information to carry your own. By focusing on optimizing your wall and orb usage on Viper, learning to get info from the UI and attack setups, you'll be able to pull off more successful flanks and lock down any site. If you're able to incorporate these tricks into your own gameplay, you'll improve your game sense and win more ranked matches. And as always, we here at SkillCapped want to thank you for watching. See you in the next one.